The following video contains content some viewers might find disturbing. The views and opinions expressed here are not facts and are nothing more than entertainment. The views and opinions are not facts and do not represent the views and opinions of Xirtus or our channel, and do not necessarily represent or reflect the views of the guests, YouTube, Google, mainstream media, society, or civilization at large, or anybody. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to Wednesday Ultra. How's it going?
Ahoy.
Doug's got water. How's that water looking, Doug?
It's delicious. Thank
That's
you.
nice.
It's hydrating. It does what I need. Water.
Seth
It does what you need.
That looks like he's from the water, right?
Captain. Yes.
I apologize in advance for swagging out this hard.
Did you go? Were you on a boat party? Like, what were you doing?
No, I was on Instagram and I saw that they make Garfield Aloha shirts.
Oh, that's amazing. All right, fair enough. Well, I don't know. There's been some crazy stuff going on this week. You know, like NATO and everything, and like the idea of conscription. But what about you? What have you been going through this week? You know.
Doug?
Go ahead, Captain. Oh, certainly, yes.
Well, you know, spring has sprung here in California. I've just been spending a lot of time out in the woods, just meditating on philosophies
and songs and stuff like that. So just not so much in the everyday news, but just out there enjoying life and getting out in nature for my favorite time of year. I advise to everybody, smell every flower you see. They all smell amazing, and it does really powerful things. It's better than medicine.
Yeah. All right. Outside is good.
Awesome.
Doug, what about you? What have you been up to?
Diving deep into this whole Ted Owens situation.
Right. Yeah. Man. So we talked a little bit about this before. The UFO contactee Ted Owens, who's pretty awesome. And yeah, you want to go into it again? He's a genius who compared himself with Moses and was talking to aliens. That's
those are some good touch points. Yeah, those are all legitimate and relevant when it comes to Ted Owens.
Genius compared to Moses, talk to aliens.
Yeah. Right, self compared. Nobody was like, that guy's like Moses. He was like, no, everybody, I'm like Moses. Like that was he was one of these dudes. But needless to say, he had like an 80+% success rate when it came to either predicting or causing some pretty serious events to occur, weather-wise or otherwise. But another thing that he did, I'm about midway in the book, I'm like, what on earth, like how far-reaching does the UFO and alien interaction phenomena have directly to do with
you haven't seen a single Ted Owens picture I put up, did you? The whole time?
No, my goodness, no. I was just rolling.
Ted Owens galore. Sorry.
Yes.
Keep going.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, take one look at the dude. He had quite a bit of like, no, check me out. I'm a badass. And people would be like, sure, Ted, whatever. And then he would curse sports teams for entire seasons.
Huh.
The Jets in the 70s, I think it was a slew of Philadelphia that he would just pour psychic hate on.
Alfred, can you hear me?
Alfred, can you?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you clearly.
Alfred Abiza out of Nigeria.
Up,
he's in Nigeria right now. How's it going in Nigeria?
I'm fine. It's great. Good to have you.
Dude, I was just wondering what you think about this. Actually, I know we kind of skipped Seth on the thought, but I'm just curious because in Nigeria, they have curses a lot. So there's this guy who was apparently Ted Owens, UFO, cursing sports teams and things like that. And then they would lose. What do you think about the idea of magical curses? Do you think that's real? Like psychic curses can work?
Of course. As an African, I always speak from experience, and I can tell you that that is very real in this part of the world. It is very real. The mystical aspect of reality is very, very sharp in this part of the world, honestly speaking.
Man, so I mean, do you
nice word choice?
What do you think about this alien contactee thing? So in the West, it's really hard to accept gods or demons or something because it's not scientific sounding.
Even just magical powers in general. Yeah,
but
we got a lot of
alien and psychic. That's a very Western acceptable sound, right? Do you think that are they the same thing, or is this kind of the Western equivalent to African magic?
Well, in Africa, we have so many types of spirit. Spirithood is a very vast aspect of reality. And the word alien is even alien to us as an African. We don't have it in our language. You understand? So it will be very, very difficult for us to relate it with it. But if I should tell you from an African perspective, what I know, this idea of alien, if I should relate it with our own aspect of religion and mysticism, I will say that these are all part of demons. They are part of the demons, but it's somehow, because the scientist, does not experience it in a way, so they try to put it in such a way that it is more scientific. You understand? For the man of science to understand. But honestly, the idea of demon, the idea of spirit, and other types of, mysticism are very, very real in Africa context. So this alien that you are talking about, if we want to talk about it from an African context, we will not call them aliens. They are not alien. They are part of us. They are very real. We communicate with them. And in fact, I told you earlier that the African reality is holistic. We don't separate things. We don't separate it. Everything is connective. You understand? So it's just part of the reality. And there are people who are very deep in the knowledge of it. When you are deep in the knowledge of it and you give yourself to it in a very deep way, that will make you to be more, aware of it in a better way. But because of the idea of Christianity and Islam, you understand? So people these days, they don't give attention to it anymore. But if you go deep into an African traditional society, all these things are just common things to them. They are just common. And they don't see it as a big deal. You understand? And there are people who are dedicated to, interacting with them. They are very dedicated to it. There are people who are even born to it. It's like it is inherited. You understand? There are some people who train their children. It's like from generation to generation, these people are meant to be deep into that aspect of, reality. And they are the ones that can explain it very well to the point that they demystify it and you no longer see it as a mystery anymore. So when we say something is alien, it is alien to the point that we don't understand it. You understand? So when it is demystified, it stops being an alien. So
right. That's actually funny because the West is doing this now too. They're saying aliens might be time travelers that are just us from the future or something. Like it's somehow we're connected to it. I mean, the idea of aliens seems to be disappearing really quickly. What do you, Seth? What do you think about this? Like the idea of alien versus demon, African magic versus American alien contactee. Like, are they connected? Or are they that different?
I don't know if I love the negative connotation associated with the word demon because I don't know what other entities are or what their moral prerogative is, or even with human beings, our moral prerogatives can seem pretty demonic at times. So I don't know if I agree with the negative connotation of demon, but as far as alien is coming from another system into our system, there's no evidence for that whatsoever, except for hearsay, as far as I know. But in terms of demons and curses and possession, I've experienced myself, and I've seen many people curse themselves, for their entire or bless themselves alternately. And like everyone else, I experience an internal dialogue where I have a me that's I'm controlling what it thinks, and then there's also an I which speaks unbidden, and both can be influenced and both can be communicated with, not only with language, but with vibrations, music, chemicals, pollution. All this stuff can affect your internal dialogue. So I'm sure there's entities, could be something as simple as a bacteria might be able to communicate with your internal dialogue, and that could be something that effectively curses you or has a demonic effect on your life.
Dude, Drew, member of the Council of Andrews and a meme lord. You're missing the point.
G'day, guys. How we going?
Dude, I was so I've got my friend Alfred here from Nigeria, and then so Doug was just bringing up Ted Owens, this alien contactee story, and it just seems really interesting and similar to me. I wonder what you think. Also, Seth was kind of elaborating on this idea: are aliens alien? Because Alfred was saying that there's not really an idea of alien in the Nigerian culture. It's a holistic lens of perspective. Do you think that there's something to this? Because we're kind of saying demons are acceptable by calling them aliens, or what do you think about all this?
Well, technically, no one's wrong in saying aliens, especially if it's from another realm or a different place beyond what Earth is, right? So interdimensional could be alien. Personally, I was on the alien train for a very long time. I think a lot of people start off that way. It's pretty fantastical and fun, and it's thought-provoking, but I'm more on the lines that it's demons now.
Yeah. So that's the other thing, Alfred. What do you think about the word demon? So we think of it in the Christian sense as being like they're evil, right? But is a demon necessarily evil, or is that?
Is a demon? Is a daemon?
Yeah.
Is it diamond? What? Yeah.
Is a diamond a girl best friend?
Is it diamond?
Yeah, I think in an African context, demons are not necessarily evil. You understand? In an African context, we have different types of deities. There are different types of powers. You understand? The idea of monotheism in an African context, we don't view it in the way the Christians and the Muslims view it. We have the god of land, the god of the air, the god of the sea. In fact, the god of land can be against you, and the god of the sea will be for you. You understand? It's very possible. in an African context. So these demons, you see them, they can be, they can do evil at a particular period or at a particular time, depending on your relationship with them. You understand? But they can also, give you fortune. They can make you good, bless you, based on your relationship with them. So every God is capable of evil, and every evil God you call evil God is capable of doing good too. So it all depends on your relationship with them. You understand? So that is just the point. So the evil in a way, or good God in a way, is utopic to us here. You understand? Because every God is capable of doing evil, and every evil God you are thinking about is also capable of doing good, depending on your relationship with them. That does that.
Wow. So, I mean, it kind of reminds me of exactly the narrative that's set up for us with aliens then, because they're saying, hey, you don't know whether aliens are good or bad. They probably have advanced technology. They can be, you can make contact with them. I mean, it does kind of feel like it parallels everything about the old possession stories or the demonic stories. But also technology, because technology, we use the word demon or diamond for the name of a program. So are we building something? I don't know if it's necessarily evil because it's magical, right? Maybe the fact that it's magical isn't necessarily. What do you think? What do you guys think?
I think the idea that you have to pick between the demons thing, when you think of it as a scope of aliens and they're not good or bad, it puts a lot of stuff into the grey. And I feel like a lot of what is happening in society with psyops and government in general, politics, it's making people go into grey areas, picking the lesser of two evils. For me, evil is still evil, and it's just making people still make the choice that they don't want, but still feeling good about it because it's in the grey. When moralistically, if you're doing something right or wrong. You know that in your core without having any kind of a religious or a theological perspective. Guttural what is good and what is bad. The black and white in life. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of aspects that we're being pushed into the grey.
I wonder about that also. Are there morals that people really don't agree on objectively? Because there's a lot of social, ethical things that we've made exceptions to what would be inherently natural. But some people argue that there's natural ethic, right? That there's a way that you're supposed to treat people. Do you think that that's real, or is it easy to find different ways people feel? Is the golden rule not so universal? Oh, Seth, you're muted, I think.
How would you describe, and forgive me, Seth, go for it if you're here.
Oh, no, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Well, just how would you describe or define the golden rule?
The golden rule is
makes the rules.
Treat others the way you would wish to be treated.
Okay. Would you also take the
do unto others as you had done unto you? I think is
do not do unto others what you would not have done unto you.
Yes, certainly. Yeah.
Like that one, I think it's at the apophatic.
That's the ideal. I believe that's a universal ideal. I mean, it's a platonic ideal. It's not achievable, but
well, it's a little different. I mean, it's this idea of, and excuse me, I'm almost. It's just do not do unto others what you would not have done unto yourself is different than do unto others as you would have done unto
one's active and one's passive. Is that what you're saying?
One's a little bit more like explicit. One's like, yeah, I'm not gonna do the shit that I don't want.
The intention of the intention of the adage is to be as explicit as possible. So whatever makes it more specific and explicit is, I think, the intention of it.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Treat everyone as your brother. But I think that Stefan Molyneux has a great treatise on this universal morality. If anyone wants to, really go more into the theory of it. But obviously the body and the spirit can malfunction in a whole host of ways, just like we were talking about influences before. You see all kinds of systems of the body break down and start malfunctioning, creating cancers and stuff like that. And that can happen morally too. And we see a moral degradation that almost seems contagious amongst today's youth. And definitely there's a lot of strong influences pushing them in that direction. But then you see it starts to just take a momentum of its own. And you can see these like violent flash mobs and stuff like that is as close to demonic possession and as far away from our innate moral compass as you can get.
What about what's going on with NATO? I wanted to pull that up also.
I love the transitions for only on Wednesday Ultra.
Well, we could do a little bit of sci still because there's some
No,
sci
that's
stuff
awesome.
before we get to NATO, but that was just like my thought earlier. But we could also talk about like the psychic studies and how
No,
the
I love
military-
the shocking
That's all
transitions.
good.
It always makes
right.
me laugh, you know.
To me-
And now after Chicago, we go to the UN. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
Meanwhile, in the
this
Hall of
lady,
Justice.
but all right. I mean, okay.
I just
international.
was thinking about it, how the NATO's super Nazi. Okay, so because you talk about the UN and the EU and everything, but you look at the guy who was the chief of staff of the NATO, who was Hitler's general Stabschef, Adolf Hausinger, and Verhassgewut. I don't know. This is pretty funny, I'm sure, if you speak German. But there's just a lot of NATO that bothers me, and it seems like more and more it never stopped being this way. So you've got NATO Sweden, right? Where is that at? US pushes NATO. US really wants Sweden to join NATO. So we're kind of pushing to create this really authoritarian alternative to the UN because the UN's not got the balls. And so they've created this alternative thing that can do it, but it didn't have the power. So we're in the process of very quickly giving NATO all the power over a world hegemony, in the wake of BRICS developing. Like NATO is going to become a country in a sense. It's going to become this empire,
It's like a meta-national entity. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, and it's got the Sol Negro Coca-Cola brothers. That's the thing that kind of freaks me out about the Nestle.
Well, and
connection.
Russia's got Pepsi. So hey, there you go. I mean, that's
the Rockefeller lead program, right? When you look at Pepsi and the Soviet Union,
dirty
Pepsi.
Oh, I don't know anything about this.
So
Jeez, NATO seems to keep going for people that seem to have swastikas all over their military. Sweden's got a shit ton of those in their Air
Finland,
Force.
to be fair, Finland Air Force, which is what you mean. By the way, I do have
Sweden's
I
got
do-
it as well.
I do have it. Is it really Sweden?
Yeah.
Swastika.
It's
A
just
lot
a
of the
shape.
Scandinavian countries
I
have
know.
I hate shapes.
Would
Have
you
an
look
outfit.
at that? I don't know. Oh yeah, I guess it could happen. Well, Coca-Cola as well. They like to use it for a while, but Finland got rid of it recently, right? Finland just quietly dropped the swastika symbol right before the NATO thing, which I think is probably for the reason that they don't want it to be too obvious what they're doing. But I mean, brutal, right? That was the symbol for forever, and they were like, we did it before Hitler, so we're cooler. I think was kind of their
well, they
vibe
didn't
on it.
tilt it. It's still an original format. I mean, like
It's not tilted.
Yeah, but reclaiming the Coca-Cola, yeah, it's still happening. But Pepsi, I've said this before, but there's a lot. There's the LEAD program, Rockefeller LEAD, and they were trying to bring the LEAD Council, right, building green, everything like this. So they give a corporation a bunch of money and tax exemption if they did stuff that was supposed to be good for the environment. And this extended to how you brought Pepsi across pirate waters. So if you cut out carbon emissions and all these problems because you could go through Samoan pirate waters, you would need to have boats, and you'd need to have they had nuclear powered warships and AK-47s that they exchanged for Pepsi. And they also, I think, exchanged some vodka in the process as well. But this is how Pepsi barrels ended up in the Soviet Union, and why Pepsi was weaponized, and why Pepsi could have sold jets. And I think when you look deeper into the Pepsi challenge, there's something about the Pepsi challenge which is a cover-up for something, which is that Pepsi was definitely in the process of laundering jets for the U.S. military. And when they were caught by this one guy who figured out how he could get a jet for this process, that's when they had to change the whole contest. But Pepsi was definitely involved with this, and there's ample evidence now when you look at the LEAD program, what they did. And there's the book and the movie Generation Pi, which is Generation Pepsi. That's what they call them in the Soviet Union, all the kids who got to have Pepsi.
They call them pie?
Generation Pepsi. Generation P, because they use the Greek alphabet instead of
got it.
the Cyrillic. So
P is
Generation
Pi,
yeah,
Generation Pi, Generation P, Generation Pepsi. Yeah.
you get what's going on here. Yeah, also the P is kind of like when you look at the pi symbol, it's like these two arches, Yakum and Boaz. And in the book
like
that becomes
doorway,
it's like a
guys.
Soviet eyes wide shut kind of thing, is what this book is. So it's pretty great.
Drink Pepsi and you'll go on a sexual journey.
Are we still talking about NATO? I feel like we didn't even say anything about NATO.
Yeah, I guess. I just wanted to say that they were Nazis. Did you guys have any other thoughts on NATO and Sweden and like that they're building up this world empire? I don't know.
I worry more about the UN because they're kind of like the think tank of the whole thing, and NATO is just a practical military alliance that kind of serves the think tank's ends. But I'm very concerned about the UN above WEF or Council on Foreign Relations or anything, just because they're like the sci-fi branch of globalism. The UN is. Let's block out the sun, or like splice our genes, like all that stuff comes from them. So they're the most concerning.
Yeah, I mean, like the problem with NATO though is they have the more forces, right? So that's
NATO now is not what NATO was 10 or 20 years ago, where it actually had a moral weight to it. Now it's just a very overt military alliance to conquer Eurasia. You know what I mean? So
right,
it's like,
yeah,
it doesn't have that moral weight anymore. And now that we see financial partnership like BRICS building up, it basically, people think of BRICS, you automatically think of a military alliance as well, because it's more like NATO and BRICS than it is NATO and UN or NATO or Russia and the West or something like that. Like you kind of think of like BRICS, like Cobra, and GI Joe, like NATO. You know what I mean? Like it's just a bipolar situation.
There's this sort of phrase, the crossing of the Rubicon, and it refers to Julius Caesar crossing over the Rubicon. And I think that that's what NATO has become. It gets at a certain point, they had so much power that being told not to use it led to them just using it against the people telling them that they couldn't use it. Right. So
we're defending against you. We're defending against you. It's like, you've come into my house. You entered my house. It's like, we're just defending against you. It's like you came in.
I think this is how like NATO could easily usurp the UN, because they're a lot of the same people, and
don't you think NATO is just like an arm of the UN? They're like their kinetic arm, like when their thoughts need to become reality.
So I just see that NATO as being the military branch of the US in Europe. I don't see NATO as being representative of its own European nations. I think it's just a military arm of the US.
I think that's the thing. I think the US, even whatever created like the CIA, that's not the US. Like that is that's the thing that created NATO. That's why it's this creepy flag, because it has to do with like these families that built Yale, not USA.
There's a reason the whole European Union and North American Union all fly the same flags: Ukraine flag, rainbow flag. So it's like, whether you say US or UN, I would say all Western nations are subsumed by the UN. Yeah.
I mean, so also in terms of Africa, like, what do you think, Alfred, in terms of Nigeria and Africa with BRICS and, there's a lot of talk about China and the West. Is there a value? Do you think Nigeria is likely to, or Africa is likely to end up divorcing the British and the West? I mean, just because there's more money that can be made, or they're getting a better deal from China or from BRICS?
Actually, I want to tell you the honest, my honest opinion. In this part of the world, in Africa, I think many people are beginning to, depart from the Western way of doing things. They are beginning to shift alliance to the Chinese, another block of civilization, simply because they thought that, or they think that, they have been exploited by the West for a very long time. So many of them are beginning to shift alliance to even to the Russians and the Chinese, you understand. In fact, one of the easiest way to get an average African man angry right now is to talk about NATO, because we feel that they don't really care about us. They only pretend to care about us when they have interest in the matter. So I think basically, in fact, this issue of NATO, I don't know so much about NATO actually. I don't know so much about NATO, but basically we don't. In fact, the alliance right now is shifting away from the West entirely because of the very, very history that we have with the slavery and the political, military coup and the death and bomb blasts that have happened in Africa. We have lost so much, and we are scared that these people, they don't love us. They don't really love us. So that is what is happening.
Do you think that it's likely that Africa will end up not independent, though? I mean, likely it's going to end up being co-opted by the East instead of the West, right? Or what do you think?
Yes, I think the new generation of African right now, they are very conscious of of the kind of relationship they are having with the West. You understand? Just that people like us, the real people who are having African consciousness, they don't have the opportunity to be listened to by the West. The people you are listening to most of the time, the people you see on the TV, on the media, they are they are the Western boys. They are your boys. You understand? The real people of Africans, they don't have the platform to speak. They don't have the real people who are facing the challenges. They don't have the platform to speak. And I believe that we Africans, we are departing from the Western way of life, and there is nothing they can do about it. But that doesn't mean that we don't like them or something. Just that the way the government, the way they interferes in the affairs of Africa, we are not comfortable with it, and it has not benefited us over time. So that is why we are doing away with them. Hello.
We're here.
Oh, can you hear me?
You're
Sorry.
muted.
Yeah, sorry. I was just saying, like, that also reminded me because Drew is in Australia, and they've got Pine Gap NSA military outpost for surveillance, which is not just looking at the United States, but looks at the entire world. And there's been a lot of talk about Australia and BRICS. Do you think that anything's happening with Australia, or what do you think, Drew?
Well, our country just flipped socialist left, so I could definitely see it happening. We had the biggest issues with our previous right-wing government, who were very much against China and war posturing, saying China's a threat, we need to arm.
True,
and now
they were.
We've got that left-wing government in who are bosom buddies of China again, and at the same time they're making sub deals with the US. And I don't know,
how does that work?
Say it's going that way.
How's that work as an Australian, where you get media from one government that's saying, "Oh, those guys are terrible. They're trying to rip you off," and the next thing comes in, "Those last guys were ripping you off. We're here to stop the ripping off." It's like, on both hands, you got a terrible government. I'm sorry, but so do we. But then you also have
welcome to the club.
Yeah, but you also, on the other hand, you've got Australians that are probably fighting each other because they were watching TV 4 years ago, and right now they're not, or they flipped channels. So you've got. What is true?
Australia is not like the
Africa?
US. We don't have a defined line in the sand of a left versus right with like a bipartisan split. In Australia, it's like 80 to 90% left wing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
so if you're a conservative in this country, you're absolutely stuffed in the future. We'd be the first people going on a gulag.
Well, I mean, so that's the other thing is NATO and Australia. They talked about Australia conscription. What do you think if there's the Ukraine thing keeps happening? There's a historical precedence that they've set by conscripting and drafting Australians. Do you think there's going to be a point where Australians would be forced to war again, like just to fight in international conflict because of this? Or do you think that they're too lazy and fluoridated now?
I think they're far too socialist left for that to happen. It would have to be an imminent threat at Australia's border, like if China moved out to South China Sea and started actively taking an island hopping, like the domino effect, then possibly it could happen. But I couldn't see any of the milquetoast lefties in this country allowing people to be sent overseas to die.
That's an interesting thing you said, though, because when you start to think about Indonesia and Australia's occupation of Indonesia, corporate occupation immediately, I mean, that could become very quickly a thing if some billionaires got upset. But right now, you think we're safe from conscription?
Yeah, at the moment, yep.
Brutal. I don't know. The more I look at the world, though, I also just watched this movie. Do you guys remember the War of the Worlds?
The Tom Cruise one?
Tom Cruise, yeah, with Tom Cruise.
No,
love that.
So I meant the actual radio broadcast. So there's a movie that came out recently.
Like the original?
Yeah.
You said watch, bro.
Yeah. So I watched a
movie.
What did it come out recently? Movie 2000.
Was it the BBC one?
19. It came out like so recently, 2020. Yeah, it is. Is it something like that? War of the World. Is this it?
Oh, what is
so
this?
It's a movie about the people in New Jersey who thought that the War of the World was really happening.
Oh, fun.
And it's kind of more interesting to see what went on because, you know, some people were driving their trucks into phone lines and it knocked out the power. And so a whole town couldn't get the rest of the radio broadcast, and they were winding up taking their children, putting them in barns, building a front line with a retired World War I soldier who's telling them they have to build a trench and stand their ground as their town's invaded by Martians. And then some fireworks exploded in New Jersey, and New Jersey was like the center of the story. So people thought that the fireworks going off was related to the Martians and were attacking and running. Just, imagine you think that the world's under attack and your whole town, you probably didn't always get along with each other. Now you're all going in to die. You're running into this ambiguous darkness where bright lights are flashing and you smell sulfur. And it's before World War II and after World War I, and super useful, because you've got Americans who need to know what it's like to face this nightmarish enemy. And I think that's what's missing, or what we're expecting to see with the alien thing. Like, what they really want to use it for is this uniting thing. It's like, well, aren't you all the same? Because this thing is so different. So doesn't that difference make you more similar?
Well, people today are more geopolitically savvy as to what's happening in the world, and they'll be less likely to support a global world war. I don't think anyone wants a kinetic conflict with Russia and NATO. No one wants that. No one wants that with China. So the only hand that they've got is to operate a Project Bluebeam, which is something that's so fantastical, so far out there, it's going to rally people like the War of the Worlds did. Because arguably we're in World War III already, but it's nations against their own people.
Yeah, Alfred, what do you think would happen if in Nigeria, so for context, green lasers, Hawaii. So let's say green lasers in Hawaii happened recently, where across the sky they saw these crazy lights and everything like that. I mean, obviously in Nigeria, you still have a lot of educated people that would know that this is science, but we were looking earlier about the cargo cults phenomena, where the U.S. military would land a place with walkie-talkies, and they would play the sound. So someone would rush up to the plane or the helicopter and they'd say, "What are you doing?" in their local language. And they would record it back and play their own language and their own voice back in their faces, so that they thought they were gods. And then so the indigenous people would build these cargo cult monuments to the planes of the people who had landed in their village. And the U.S. military realized this was a very useful way of taking over a place, because the indigenous people would think that they had been contacted by gods. And they have these stories like John would come again, and they would return from the sky and they would bring more bananas or whatever the thing is. So, I mean, how hard would you think it would be in Africa to stage some sort of alien takeover, right? And convince people that they deserve to be in charge because they have more magic and more power.
Well, I'm from the village, and I'm speaking from the village right now. I speak from the root of Africa in Nigeria here. Africa, based on the way we have been colonized, based on the way we have been brainwashed right from the beginning, it is very easy for us to, accept most of the things, that are sold onto us here, because of the situation we are in. You understand? Like they always say that a beggar have no choice. So most of the time, because of the sophisticated way of life, or because of the idea that the aliens, like you said in quote, are selling to us, and because of the situation we are, it will be very, very easy. African is just it's very easy, to convince them if you want to do something. You understand? Probably because of the way we have been taken backward in time, with the slavery, the way they took our great people out of Africa, So I think it will be very, very easy for them. It will be very easy to convince, because of the lack of sophisticated education that we have here. We don't have that knowledge. It's not there, for people. The African tradition, we don't analyze things deeply. We are rather synthetic. We embrace things rather than analyze things. We are very open-minded people. You understand? So people, vast majority of us, despite the fact that we are now, being educated, I still believe that we are easily carried away by many of these things, because if you see the level at which the technology of the world is going, we are behind. And as a result of that, if somebody who can create what is alien to you, what you have not seen before, present that thing to you, it will be very easy for that person to convince you to do anything that he wants you to do. So I believe that. I believe that in fact, if you look at what is going on in Africa right now, in fact, like me, like I told you, I'm from the village. Right now, I'm talking to you from the village. And not many of us can even, command English. Not many of us can speak English. I was born and raised by poor parents. I've not had the opportunity to travel out of this zone, my entire life.
Sound great, man.
Yeah. So I'm just struggling to communicate, and I hope you understand what I'm saying.
You should hear him. You should hear him dissect Hegel. It's brutal. It's brutal. But I mean, so the other thing is, when you think about how different Africa is, how alien or similar is America. I mean, Seth, for instance, in LA, let's say Independence Day happened. Would people really take? I mean, if you had a Project Bluebeam, would people fall?
Aren't we a cargo cult? I mean, what's up with all our obelisks? We have these obelisks. We put them all our most important places. We don't even know we don't. I mean, as a people, we don't even really have like an oral tradition to explain what it is. So, I mean, aren't we really just putting up monuments to, forgotten or misunderstood gods, and just that's part of our normal life? It's a spark of creativity more than anything. If you see something alien to you, that just gives you a whole branch of ideas, and you want to do something to represent it. So I would make, if something fell from the sky I had never seen and gave me all these new ideas, I totally want to remember it and honor it and build a statue to it, just so people would keep that in their memory when something new came and changed your mind and your thoughts.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we found out that the crucifix is a representative of the key that was tied to the keychain, which is the rosary, or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Well, the West has this hubris that, we're separate from Africa in a lot of ways because we're highly educated and our value of life is so much higher and better off. But if the military industrial complex and the intelligence corporations of the world throw out a Project Bluebeam with 50 to 60 year advanced tech, we'd think it's magical and we think it's aliens. We'd be so convinced that we'd be on the exact same playing field as what Africans would be.
Now, there is a Dunning-Kruger effect with that, though, right? Where you start to become aware of the idea that all sufficiently advanced technology appears to be magic. Once you have that, integrated, that knowledge, then you can start to put on your glasses for that. And if you do see something like a blue beam, be like, this is probably like when C-3PO tricks the Ewoks or something.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing. It's so you can be skeptical, but you can also accept that things are possible right now, which is interesting because it used to be that you just had to know most things weren't possible. Like when someone tries to sell you a hovercraft in a magazine, probably not going to really do the thing you wanted it to do.
How many times?
But these days...
You throw mass trauma into that at the same time. If they say dropped a neutron bomb on DC, or they dropped a rod of gourd onto New York and obliterated it with the world watching, the kinetic trauma of that may overcome that effect. You may not be able to discern things if you're highly heightened and stressed out.
So yeah, and that's the other thing is, do you think that it is just a blue beam experiment where they're manipulating, or do you think that the elite are kind of like witch doctors, because they sound like they're trying to talk with magical demon sources? Is that just a gimmick to make us think that we can't do what they can do, or are they legitimately in contact with, because again, with the Ted Owens, right, talking about being in contact with extraterrestrials, or Maria Orsa's talking about demons, it does seem like there might be something real there.
That's a great question. I mean, the knee-jerk reaction is yes, they are in touch with something, because they're the ones with these very creative ideas that we never would have thought of about life extension and AI and just all this kind of stuff, and microchips and just every kind of engineering technology, so it does seem like they've got something that stimulates creativity that we don't have.
Right.
Access to some information.
Leviticus, do not turn to mediums or seek out spirits, for you will be defiled by them. So there's also that idea, that they
Someone had just had a
existentially-
bad time with the spirits. That's all. He took one out. It took a turn. It didn't go well, but that doesn't mean everybody has a bad time with spirits.
Well,
okay?
yeah. So that's my question.
Is that
Is like,
Leviticus, take it easy. All right.
I mean, Deuteronomy tells you not to smash your testicles. So there's a lot of things in the Bible, but I'm just curious. Do you think
can't go to heaven
Note
if you
to
have smashed
self.
testicles.
That's what that was.
Even if someone else smashes your testicles, you can't go to heaven.
Yeah,
That's
well, that's
Paul
how it
Goss's
usually
joke.
works. Most people
Messed
get
up.
a doctor, but I still think that's the problem. I mean, it's interesting that it's in there. I don't know. I wonder though about
It's over.
Leviticus saying that you shouldn't mess with spirits or demons. I mean, do you think that that's because they're trying to keep you from something interesting and cool? What?
Well,
It-
that just sounds like a very upset parent giving a broad stroke brush, kind of like, "Hey, don't you mess with spirits!" Like, up, not until you're ready. That's what that seems like.
Yeah,
Because at the same time, go ahead. I'm sorry. go
No,
ahead.
please. Sorry, you're done.
Well, just at the same time, you have the religion saying, "Yo, you got saints, confirmation or otherwise, super connections here and there, guardian angels, Mother Mary, etc., that you can connect with. Aren't those spirits too? But these other guys, up, like it's there's a little hypocrisy going on there."
Yeah.
Or devil's advocate, is it mum and dad saying that, yeah, that guy down the end of the road with the white van who's really creepy? Don't go near that guy.
Don't go near that.
But so what's a saint, right? So a saint is a man.
Good advice.
A saint's a person who has committed 3 miracles and is working for God. So is that different than a medium who is able to see the future or is told the future by spirits? It seems like in the Bible they're constantly trying to exorcise demons, and they'll include in that people with autism or people that are seeing the future, right? Like it's some sort of a curse, and a lot of the time it's a curse, right? Curse of Cassandra. The idea in Hellenism is that Cassandra had the gift to know all prophecies, but she couldn't be understood, or believed, especially. So she could tell people exactly what's going to happen. They're like, yeah, right. And then that would just suck, right?
That was her entire life.
That's like, yeah.
It's like Alex Jones.
Yeah, right, Cassandra.
She's pulling out her hair. She's like,
The
listen to
original
me.
Alex Jones.
Yeah, before the op. I mean, it's possible.
Hmm.
So I don't know. When the more I think about it, though, demons. This is where we're at. It's not a hypothetical anymore. The way AI was a hypothetical, it's no longer hypothetical. Now with AI, we're interacting constantly. Like I can pull up a question. Let's do Edge browser to talk to Bing. See what Bing says.
And like, what if everyone's correct though? What if it is demons and it is aliens at the same time? It's just interdimensional entities that we're making contact with.
It's
Any way
interesting.
we can make them fight each other and leave us alone.
Is
Let
it
them fight.
possible
Great.
that the word alien is the wrong word? Give it some ambiguous thing like this.
Yeah, that's really make it chew AI.
Yeah. Is alien the wrong word? I wonder if it's gonna try.
Is this GPT-4?
It's like a hypnotic prompt because it forces the conscious mind to search. It's
What
good.
is a less disparaging? Okay, could
Traveler.
demons and diamonds be aliens? And
Well-
aliens be interconnected concepts? I don't know.
I mean, daemon used to be basically an interchangeable word for guardian angel. They used to say that everybody's got a daemon, right?
Yeah, right. And so we got to a point where etymologically, we stopped trusting the Greek root, but it was the word we would have used for everything. And so alien, again, being foreign, I think that's the question there. Like, is it really foreign? Because it might not be foreign. It's kind of a part of yourself, really.
Mm.
Are you a daemon?
Well, and so back to Ted Owens. Is Ted Owens bringing about massive PK events plus like sweating UFOs? Or is he actually in contact with an interdimensional, because they do tell him that they are interdimensional?
Bing does use daemons as part of its infrastructure to manage and monitor its service. However, these daemons are not related to the supernatural beings related earlier.
What are they?
Possible they are. In what way could you say they are connected?
What is a daemon in a programming term then? Or what's
Yes. In the sense that they are not of this world. However, they're connected, more of a philosophical. Okay, what is a daemon? See, because a daemon seems kind of like a manifested purpose, right? You kind of crafted, this ritual that's repeating itself, runs continuously in the background, and wakes up to handle periodic service requests. I mean,
okay, that's funny.
Well, that's interesting. That's getting close.
What do you think, Alfred? Do you here AI is trying to tell you no, it's not a demon, but do you think that technology is magical? Do you think that there is it says it's using daemons. Do you think that there is some tie there?
Yes, to a very great extent. I believe technology is magical in such a way that because not an average man most of the time does not understand how it works. So, like I said, things that you don't understand are aliens. You understand? So, for example, if I should tell my mother that right now I'm talking to somebody from the United States, if you explain that with science, you would think you are crazy. You understand? The old woman does not believe that something like that can happen. She will believe that it is magical for such a thing to take place. Me here in Nigeria communicating with somebody from the United States, she will believe that thing is not possible. You understand? So many things here. That is why the word we call a cell phone here in my local language is Obiazen. Do you know the meaning of that?
No, Obiazen. What does that mean?
That's a little witch. A little witch.
A little witch?
Yeah. So you get that. So it is very, very, very difficult for you to convince somebody who does not have an elementary knowledge in science that these things are not magical.
Dude, that's the best name for a cell phone. I'm calling my phone the Little Witch from now on. That is it's exactly right.
Yeah, so that is how they will look at it, except some of who have had the opportunity to at least understand that these things, that can be explained in a scientific way. Otherwise, a vast majority of an African person from the village, they will believe that these things are not real. These things are demons. You understand? Because when you look at the African traditional religion, for example, there is a time or a period in the night. You understand? Those people who are possessed with some kind of spiritual power, they travel from one place to another, and they communicate in a certain way from one place to another. In fact, there was even a particular witch doctor who could go to women's house, have sex with them without the women knowing. So all those things, these traditional people, these our village people here, they also believe that this is how all these things you are calling technology also works. You understand? So they believe they are magical, they are demons, not science. They don't call it science. So what we call science here, to many of our traditionalists, is not science. It has some kind of spiritual power. Understand? In fact, an average traditional African does not speak for 1 minute without talking about, all those spiritual things and all those magical stuff, because these are part of our daily experiences. Every time, every moment is mystical. You understand? And the only people who are not beginning to demystify this mysticism are people who have the opportunity to be educated to understand science. Understand? From my own perspective, to a very great extent, I believe that there are also some very, very magical power in this science and technology, which the scientists most of the time will not want to show to us. These things are powerful. I believe to a very great extent that not all these things can be explained physically. There must be some vital forces that are behind, that are propelling these things to happen the way they are. Do you understand?
It's freaking crazy that you have wireless electricity that we can communicate. I agree.
Yeah. We Africans, we also had it, but due to the fact that we cannot make our own physical, we cannot explain our own in such a way, so it becomes magical or demon. But assuming we are able to explain it and we're able to systemize it in a way to make everybody understand, it will no longer be magical or demonic, whatever. You understand? There are so many things. If you want to make rain in Africa, if you want to travel in Africa through a magical, if you want to do so many things, in Africa, there are so many ways you can do it, mix things together, to perform those things. You get it? So that is basically how we are here in this part of the world. So it will be very difficult for you to convince anybody that this technology, they are not magical to you. They are. And
it
I
seems
believe
to me like it has to be, because the idea that also people used to talk and hear voices, and now you have voices in your head, everything that was described as insanity. It's a question of controlling the extra information, so that the fact that
just like you see the issue of religion, there were things that people used to say were miracles. You understand? But after the evolution of science, after science have advanced in a very, very, vast way, people are beginning to understand that those things that they used to call miracles, we were not actually miracles. In fact, they can be explained in a scientific way. So the higher you go in knowledge, the higher you are able to demystify things, the less religious and less. I don't want to put it like less spiritual. No, the more things will be less. There's a particular word I want to use for it. Superstitious. You understand? Right. Something like that. So the less things will be superstitious to you, like, okay, this is abomination, this one is mystic.
But that's also a problem. So like the Matthew 12:39 says,
anything you are able to understand, that thing becomes not spiritual anymore. That thing becomes not alien anymore. That thing becomes normal.
This part of the Bible, it says a wicked and adulterous generation demands a sign. And so we live in a time when all around you is magical signs, but you don't see them anymore. So you demand them. You demand to see something even more miraculous than what you're seeing already.
Yeah. If they have told our ancestors that today there will be something that is called cell phone, they will have disputed. They will not believe it. Yes, they will not believe it. So to a very great extent, if you have mentioned the word technology in the days of our ancestors, they will have said you are into mystical something, or you were into demonic things. If you are mentioning to them, because their civilization as at that time, it cannot capture the meaning of what you are calling technology today. You understand that? So, but right now, today, we are able to talk about all these things without alluding any sense of spirituality to it, because we are able to study it. The scientists are able to systematize it in such a way that we are able to know how it works. We know how it is going. But if somebody doesn't know how it works, there is no way you will convince that person that it is not demonic or it is not magical. Just like me, there is no way I can convince my mother that all these things are not magical. She will believe that they are magical, and she will have her own explanation for it, different from my own explanation. And the issue of worldview, all these things, they affect what we call science and technology too. And
also, it's crazy because they're incorporating Africans into the creation of AI. OpenAI used Kenyan workers that they paid less than $2 an hour to make ChatGPT less toxic. And so they were trying to train it on the behaviors of Kenyans, because they noticed that they were, courteous, they were working well together, and they wanted to actually train the AI on how they were interacting with each other. So they just literally trained them. And they also had it, figure out when there was a point of contention, a cultural point of contention. So it's interesting, because a big part of what we want AI to be is to train it on, different parts of civilization. And here it is, right? Training it on Kenyan workers, right? But of course, they're getting paid $2 an hour, and then they're done. Once you've trained it, there's no point to hire them anymore. So it's a limited amount of hours that they're getting paid for, right? I mean, then I don't know. The other thing is, we're looking at mini GPT and some of these AIs that are coming out that are open source. And so there's a lot of the opportunity for people to make their own AIs. Do you think that I kind of think we're about to emerge into a point where persons are making AI more than just giant billion-dollar corporations. Like they're going to start to see more emerge. Do you think that there's any chance of like an African GPT or like some kind of a trained on holistic culture to emerge, something that's really beneficial from all this software that's designed really just to learn?
Yes, right now, you see, when you take an African student out of Africa and you take that particular student to a Western world where science and technology are appreciated, you realize that that person will be doing well. You understand? Because of the worldview and the tradition of that environment. Right now, there are a lot of Africans, a lot of African youth, especially in my country, Nigerian youth, who are very, very deep into science and technology due to their interaction with the West. And the only challenge here is that due to poor governance and lack of basic infrastructure, they are not able to channel that energy for positive development. What they do actually is that they start trying to use that knowledge to commit all manner of fraud online. You understand? So they miss the point from there. Instead of trying to create, they are trying to satisfy their immediate need. Otherwise, when it comes to Microsoft and all other aspect of this science and technology, I think the average African student is actually very curious and is doing well, in that aspect. But the only problem is that because the basic needs are not available, they tend to want to satisfy their immediate need first, before they go for the knowledge and the bigger things in science and technology. Yes,
they're also in the process of telling Americans they want to pause AI development. So it would be the ideal thing to pause it here where it's expensive, move it to Africa where they can pay people $2 an hour, and then they can continue working where they have a monopoly on all the tech and of the government because they can control and pay off the government.
No, the average African person is ready to work very hard, even if it means to work 24 hours just to get things done. You understand? Because of the hardship and the environment where he or she was bred or grew up in. You understand? So if actually the West or some people who have good intention for Africans, if they are able to liaise and have that relationship with African people who are able to do these things, I believe the African people they will appreciate and they can deliver. I can tell you that they can deliver.
Yeah, just be careful who you dance with. Like the Chinese, the Americans, American international corporations. None of these people are people you really want. They're the devil kind of thing. The other thing I was looking at though was gene editing, because recently they interviewed Kevin Esvelt, who worked on CRISPR, and he's talking. There's a lot of amazing things with CRISPR. You could just kill off malaria and be the end of it, right? But what are the ethics to destroying diseases, or destroying other life forms that are living on Earth and everything? And where do we get to a point where all of a sudden there's a certain class of people that are essentially immortal and have a monopoly on health, because anybody who wants to have this medicine is going to have to go through those people who figured out how to hold on to wealth the longest without having death taxes or any of these inhibitions that have kept their wealth from accumulating, right? So
what happens biologically? Like, we look at the environment as an example. If you take out one key species from an environment, there can be an environmental collapse. One key life form can disappear. That affects the food chain and everything blows out. What happens if we start messing around with human DNA and we take out a key component of our DNA or something that's encoded within us that's supposed to be there organically, and it causes massive issues down the line?
Right. Yeah. What do you guys think? Human transhumanism and this kind of worry about like how subtle something little could be. That's a huge change. We talked earlier about losing your humanity, but how something we don't realize is important. It might be like a pin that holds it all together.
Certainly, it makes you. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, you please.
Oh, I went last time. It's your turn.
Well, yeah, I mean, but by the same token, it's going to happen either way. So the real question is, should we participate or just watch other people make Frankenstein monsters? Because it's going down either way. AI is not pausing. Gene editing is not pausing. None of those options are on the table. So what it really comes down to is, do we want to try to do it and faster and better and apply our own morals to it, you know? Just like everyone was trying to make a super soldier and everyone was trying to go to the moon and go to space. They're all the races, you know, this is the new race. It's going down either way. So your philosophy will guide you whether we should stoically just sit back and watch or whether we should attempt to participate. But whatever we do on our own, we're not going to really be able to stop other people doing from what they want to do. That applies to nuclear missiles and AI as well.
It would be interesting if we wiped out a bunch of these things like malaria and then saw that it caused major untold damage, you know, because this entire region needed it or something. You know,
everybody's kneecaps disappear. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Or just
it's funny you bring that up because I was kind of wondering, it's a slight diversion, but I was wondering if like human depopulation, the trend of that effort is maybe, you know how like other species like coyotes, every night when they howl, they're counting all the coyotes. And if there's not enough, the women start ovulating more and everyone just gets in a heat to reproduce more. And if there's too many coyotes.
So that's what coyotes are doing. I did not know that.
Yeah, that's what howling is.
Like,
they're
keep it down out there. And I just didn't, I left it that.
No, the women are counting how many coyotes they are. And if they innately know how many the region can support and how many coyotes there should be. So they'll reproduce more or less based on the numbers that are reported. So I wonder if humans have a similar kind of instinct, like when maybe that we have like a intrinsic point where we know we're overpopulating and like a response kicks in where we're like, we need to, you know, start chopping off some genitals and changing genders and doing all kinds of weird stuff just to like bring the numbers down. Like that's our way of doing it. I don't really think so, but I mean, other animals do it. So it's kind of interesting.
Well, that'd be a quick way to study that. Look at the decline of fertility in built up areas versus rural areas. And if there's a correlation.
That's a good point. Yeah. Also, of course, coyotes can only hear so far. So like the coyotes in New York don't know about the numbers in California. So you're right. It would be like more of like a regional thing.
Police state. So that's the classic segue.
Oh, good. Are we doing robot dogs?
Well, so I mean, you've got this thing where people talking about the expansion of the police state, and you know, so talking to Alfred about situations in Nigeria, you think America would be this great place to run off to, but then you start reading some of the news about America, and you're like, whoa, America is terrifying, and we have a lot of the same problems or some weird other ones that aren't as familiar. You know, like the police state one is kind of, I guess you've got less police state. It's got more like Islam and Christians fighting, but the police state in America is continually expanding in every direction. And the amount of information that they have about you, I guess Australia is similar. So anywhere in the West, right, they just kind of record everything you're doing. They know where you are. They're predicting where you're going. They record everything in your phone. And in places where they've allowed for crime to increase, right, ever since 2017, 2019, like it's legal to rob stores in San Francisco. So businesses have been moving out, small businesses are moving out, insured large businesses are moving in. They're bringing in private security infrastructure. And then they want to have more police to see and watch what's going on in the downtowns because they've cleaned out all the small businesses. So now they kind of own these like corporate districts that are developing in the downtowns where people don't really live. I mean, they can if they're renting because they're working for some tech company. It's $5,000 a month or something. But
it's all part of they're building an infrastructure that's definitely going down the route of 15-minute cities, or as Victoria's called them, 20-minute neighborhoods. There's a stretch of the Narre Warren Highway in Victoria here where it goes out into the middle of the country, goes nowhere, and they've put in the space of like a 600-meter bit of road, 7 opportunities to make a U-turn and go back the way you came. And at each point, there's a camera. So a lot of the conspiracy theorists here are saying that that's the camera to identify your car to tell you if you've gone too far. You'll get a warning. Sorry, you're leaving your zone. Return to where you came from.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, because like, why would you do that? You're probably wasting carbon, wasting gasoline or something like that. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think about this? Because we talk about the freedoms of the West. Alfred, you've talked about wanting to come to America, come to the West for the freedoms, but we're in the process of locking down every city into these. Oh, he disappeared for a minute. I'm sorry, it's bad internet. We've come down to locking 20-minute cities, right? So we're at a point very soon where we are in the gnarliest police state, probably worse than anything that's existed before it. Yeah. Yes. You with the hand up.
Thank you, Professor. I've heard about the 15-minute cities in Oxford, England. This is the first I've heard of your 20-minute towns. So I think that's kind of cool. You get an extra 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spacious.
But has there been any report of this actually being implemented in the U.S. yet?
They did say they wanted to do Palestine, or is that right?
Palestine, East
Palestine.
Palestine.
Minutes.
Your water's not clean.
Yeah, I don't know. Some people say it was a conspiracy theory or something like that. Fact check: Ohio derailment not linked to 15-minute city plan. Yeah, so in other words, they're saying, okay, we didn't plan this, but it's a good idea. It's a
So what is like an adjuster just show up, be like, I have another option for you, you know?
It's like this guy. Does this guy look like he dated your mom and he's trying to explain what's going on?
15-minute cities in the States is happening exactly like RoboCop. It's like the major cities are just becoming crime hellholes to the point where a corporate entity comes in and cleans up.
Yeah.
Okay. I see it.
Well, I mean, Detroit is already owned by Citibank, right? For like 15
right.
years now or something. They haven't had a mayor. They have a vestigial mayor, but the guy who actually runs the city is a Citibank city manager.
Is that pretty big in Australia as well? Like the properties have been bought out, the mom and pop parts of Sydney, and they're gone. They're all owned by big banks.
In the capital cities, they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the big banks own a whole bunch of commercial property that's no longer utilized after the lockdown. That's like their number one security. So it's kind of interesting. You know,
ironically, the biggest like consumer of farms and residential housing in Australia is Chinese foreign nationals, which they circumvent it by having family members who live here become citizens and buy it on their behalf. But the majority of our rental properties are Chinese owned.
Apparently, Alfred he used up all of his data. Poor guy.
Oh,
I'm gonna send him some
nice
data.
having him.
Alfred, that was awesome. Yeah, thank you,
bro.
Alfred.
Yeah, it's good to study Nigeria a bit and see what's going on. I've noticed, like with Nigeria, there's a lot of the time they're keeping it impossible for anyone in Nigeria to like build a business, to work with a bank, to interact with online money. So it's virtually impossible to get out of the situation that they've perpetuated. Tweet falsely claims Joe Biden announced Nigeria's stopover en route to North Ireland. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's definitely like a plan to extract the wealth of these places. We've been seeing all these places lose their mom and pop shops. I don't know. The idea of a 15-minute city seems real. Go ahead, Drew.
Well, the whole idea of Africa as a continent, even to this day, is it's a backup. If you run out of resources, you just send your stuff to Africa. You take everything from there and exploit it. Like, there's a reason why it hasn't been developed to the state of what Europe or other Western countries have, which really, in the grand scheme of things, geographically compared to Europe, that should be a highly developed continent by now. But it's just being exploited by corporations, by nations.
What do you think is going to happen? Do you think that Africa is going to be a reset economy, like a new civilization they build after they destroy the rest of it? Or,
well, it'd be perfect. It's resource rich. It's open still. It's very natural in a lot of areas compared to what it used to be. People don't recognize the scale of Africa as well. Like, it's a perfect spot to go reset if you depopulate a few areas and you want to rebuild somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem like that's a big, like what's been going on in Africa, right? You've got CIAs, you've got like economic destruction everywhere, you know, and everything keeping it perpetually from developing itself. I mean, even looking at, what was it, the Sahara Sea project, right? Like there's more effort put into building a sea down into the Sahara all the time. So I just wonder more about when. I mean, we've talked about the next 20 years and everything, but do you think it's that imminent? Do you think we're that close to this terraforming mission?
I know, I have a gut feeling that it won't be until we're elderly men and can't do anything about it. I still feel like it's in its infancy. They're just letting us know what's going to happen, but I don't think their technology and their ability to do it's quite there yet.
God,
Yeah,
the
I think
flag-
more likely you would kind of, if you knew actual greening trends, you would start to you'd invest where you predict greening will be naturally,
Hmm.
which is, I mean, Greenland.
They keep saying Greenland melting, tipping point,
Right.
that whole thing. I mean, I think that's happening in our lifetime, probably in the next 5 or 10 years, right? Like some more Greenland meltage.
Yeah, but I don't think they actually understand how that affects water levels and ocean temperatures and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think the water levels are going to rise as high as they're predicting. I don't agree with that either. Might expand the sea.
But
somewhat.
I think Greenland is some nice property. Who knows how big it is on every map? It's like radically different sizes. So I don't even know if it's big or small in reality. But some prime real estate under there, you know. Maybe they'll have. Maybe they can mine uranium there and leave Africa. You know, alone. Maybe they have minerals under there. Who knows?
Globalists, whistleblowers, Bud Light. We talked about Bud
What
Light.
about robot dogs? I'm waiting for
Robot
robot
dogs?
dogs.
What was the
New-
robot dogs thing?
New York City, the NYPD is getting robot dogs.
Right.
Oh,
Right. That's
Oh, how
right.
wonderful.
And I
Do
love
they
it.
also have mounted AR-15 compatibility?
Not yet. They say they're never going to arm them. Of course, they will later. But
Robot
I think
dogs.
any kind of cop
Only
is
during
better
the
than-
holidays. Yeah, right.
I'd
No,
prefer
that's the-
any kind of conscious being over a human being to be a cop. I'd rather it be like a lion, you know, or an actual dog would be better because a dog would actually obey its training. Nothing
What
is
about parrots
more
that could actually
prone to
talk to you?
accidents than humans. You know, so I'm looking forward to. I wish all the cops could be robots right now. And TSA, every rank and file bootlicking authoritarian day job, I wish they would all be put out of business right now. Replace them all with robots, and that way, it's like, you know, you can reach a point of maturity in your life where you don't get angry at inanimate objects, but when people are being authoritarian bootlickers, it's endlessly frustrating. So I'm looking forward to replacing all these, you know, a-holes with robots.
I mean, the robot dog, the thing is, this is the beginning of once you start getting AI out into the real world, right?
Is
So
it
it starts
painted like a
figuring out-
Dalmatian?
That's yeah, it's probably safer than a Dalmatian.
Why not give it a head if you're trying to make it look like a dog? I mean, it's a little creepy to have no head.
I don't know, because like I think
Googly eyes on it or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Give it
that's
a
the
front nose.
uncanny. That's the uncanny valley part. Like once you look at a butterfly and you see a human face and you're terrified, you know, that you don't necessarily want that.
Well, like C-3PO, if he had no head, would be creepier, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
I like his head because it's like a
Yeah,
little
people love it.
spaghetti strainer. That's very nice of him to.
Oh, it does have a head. I just couldn't see it.
Yeah, he's
Well,
got a
some
head.
of them don't.
This one's got a head. It's got the little
Is that
back.
or is it head or articulating arm? I think that's an
That's right,
articulating
yeah, it's like
arm.
articulating arm, yeah.
That's to grab you in the balls.
So
See,
it's
now
neck,
they are technically armed.
so it can spring its neck
uh,
at you and bite you like a venomous. That's pretty cool. I like that. It's not gonna poop all over the place. Like somehow I like this better anyway. Like I think people should probably have more robo dogs. Do you remember Ibo?
No.
Ibo was the Sony dog.
Oh,
that-
I do remember this.
and it was
No.
pretty sweet. And then they just stopped selling them, which I just don't completely understand. Like, how did this not take off more? People were so stoked on this $2,000 robot dog.
Probably killed a kid and they buried the story.
It's so tiny, it couldn't have. I don't see. Maybe. I mean, I could see it, but I mean, the Korean there's a Korean company that makes these robot dogs still too, and I wonder why humans weren't pushed to have more robotic pets in the last 20 years, because that would have been the thing you do. You get a little kid to fall in love with their robot, and then as they get older, they start to trust the robot, and then eventually they're used to working for the robot because they had a puppy, you know.
And then it's the Matrix.
See, we're ahead right now with technology and like CRISPR genetic engineering. Is the future going to be cool robots like a Star Wars universe, or is it going to be people have their own like miniature griffin or a tiny elephant in the backyard and cool crazy stuff like that?
Right. Like
Can
a
it be
full of
both?
whales.
I
Can it
feel
be
like Star
both?
Wars is decidedly both, right? Yeah, that's
It is,
the thing.
isn't it? Right.
Yeah, but it seems like the mechanism part, like that's replaced in the Star Wars world, that you lose a big part of yourself. You lose you can't have the Force when you've got the electrical system to that extent. So there's something a little different between the two. I don't know if that carries
Wait,
over
what?
to the real world.
Can you say that again? The thing about
Like-
not having the Force?
So droids can't have the Force.
Oh, droids can't, of course. Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
and Darth
If you're
Vader
a
has.
robot, you can't have
They
the
don't-
Force.
Darth
What if
Vader
you what if you give him a midichlorian tank?
Maybe that's what I'm wondering. Like, can you just plug a robot into the body of a human and take over the body, then wouldn't that be, I'm sorry,
There you
Disney's now going to steal this idea. Disney copyright trademark Xirtus 2000.
Well, isn't R5D4 a force sensitive droid now? They've retconned that. The
What is it? R5D4?
Yeah, I think the little redheaded one that blows the stuff in A New Hope.
R3D4 or something? R5D4?
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah,
I think they're retconning that, and he's a force sensitive droid.
I like it. Go on. I haven't heard that. Well, I mean, so how is he force sensitive? Is it because isn't it part of the force require like living something alive?
Yeah, I guess
so. That was a retcon itself, though. So I mean,
yeah,
I don't.
Perhaps he has sensors for midichlorians. He can pick them up ambiently in the air. They've
midichlorians are the sensor that you have in you for the force.
So maybe they took midichlorians and injected them into.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, Lou was talking about this a few weeks ago on Ultra of attaching a pineal gland to an AI and giving it a gut and stuff like that.
Oh, I can't even trademark my idea because it's already been pre-discussed. But if you look at General Grievous, he was basically removed of all of the parts of him except for his nervous system, I think, right? He's got like a little bit of his brain and a little bit of his heart.
Doesn't he get shot in his heart?
He still has his heart, yeah. But most everything else is gone. So he's collected force sensitive tools because he was force sensitive, but he's basically lost most of it. And that's also the point of Darth Vader, that Darth Vader doesn't have as much force as he did before because he's physically less there. There's less of him. Right?
Doesn't Darth Vader choke someone through a view screen that's like not even in the same like solar system?
Yeah, but he's using his mind to do it, right? So he still has his body. He's got parts of his body. Darth Vader still has a lot of force, but he was just ultimately so forceful, and now he's just a little bit of force, right? I think is the idea. Like he's still got more. And also, according to some retconning, the Darth Vader comic book, they didn't need to torture him that way. Darth Sidious made sure that he kept having, like he was immediately put into this machine. They could have healed him. They have all this technology to grow new limbs. He wanted him to constantly be in pain so that he's more angry and cruel all the time. Furthest we've gone into the comic books of Star Wars ever, I'm pretty sure.
Cool.
I love Star Wars.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's screw you, Emperor. That's messed up. And also, whoa. If his power was like that, where he could choke somebody halfway across the galaxy via a screen, here we didn't even really see close to how powerful he was before then.
It's weird how much midichlorians changes Star Wars, because all of a sudden it becomes about like genetics and eugenics.
Right?
Who's got the most midichlorian gene?
Right? Unfortunately, that seems to echo reality, right? Like some people just really aren't that in touch.
It's pretty brutal. I mean, and just also that the whole Star Wars story is about stealing kids, essentially, and that the good guys are.
It's really interesting, and it's not unique to Star Wars. I mean, Lord of the Rings has it, but the idea of like evil ascended masters, like we all understand the idea of an ascended master, but it's hard to visualize, or conceptualize like an evil ascended master. Like you understand all the properties of the universe and how everything interrelates, and instead of becoming like Hare Krishna, you become Darth Vader.
Yeah, that
or
is
Saruman, yeah.
Well, Star Wars does it in a way that the Jedi are just like the Spanish Inquisition or the Catholics. Like they're taking young boys, predominantly young boys, and making them religious zealots. Whereas you look into like the expanded universe, you've got the Dathomir witches, and you've got
they're keeping the cycle up. They're keeping the cycle going, the pendulum swinging. The original Jedi, the Gray Jedi, was all about balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Balance, of bringing balance to the Force. So people say the light side, but the term the light side appears nowhere in any Star Wars script. There's no light side. It's and the Jedi Council was like an attempt to be like on the lights, like let's lead with like reason and everything, and to still manage to make everything worse. Like balance is the only way.
It's weird. It's weird because also, does that mean, was George Lucas saying he loves the Jesuits? Is that part of Star Wars mythology? Is he thinks that we need a liberation theology, Jesuit New World Order? Or is he saying, are we not understanding his idea of the Jedi, or not as sympathetic as we think? Does he not love the Jedi nearly as much as we think he does?
I think that the Jedi Council is like a bastardization of like everything that like the Jedi Order, who are like monks, like observers, and all about trying to psychically bring balance to the Force. Then when you actually become like a political body and like a council, I mean, this is like a very good metaphor for like the elites that we have today. Like they actually are the best educated and have a lot of like experience in the sciences and the arts and stuff like that and philosophy, and they've been very well taught, but yet somehow, you know, they don't have they don't have morals, you know, that we can understand, and they behave in all kinds of strange ways. It's really similar. Yeah. But I don't know about Jesuits specifically though. Did somebody say that George Lucas is a Jesuit or something? Or
no, I don't think he is, but just the fact that the Jedi are so clearly the Jesuit. It could be that he just jacked it from Dune, because Dune has the Bene Jesuit, right?
Right, yeah.
Bene
I've also
Jesuit.
heard it said that the Jedi are Jews. You know, I've heard a whole bunch of stuff said.
Yeah,
Well,
I did an
The
episode
Bene
on
Jesuit
that.
is
You
like the
guys.
sisters of Dathomir. That's what that's supposed to be like. I think he really.
Well,
stole
in
it.
our cosmology, people talk about the Jesuit like they are the Sith. So then who's the Sith? If the Jesuits are the Jedis, who's the Sith in that metaphor?
So the Sith are interesting because there's only supposed to be 2 of them at that point. So it would have to be like some like whoever is the ultimate manipulator. It can't be an entire group of people.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in the Star Wars expanded universe, there was the Sith Empire, and they got to a point where they were so powerful they conquered everything, and the universe had to go against them. But they created the law of 2 internally because they were too powerful. They even realized their own power.
Right. And then keeping people from knowing everything is the only way to keep more power than other people. You have to make sure they have less.
So Davos is the Jedi Council, and then there's 1 or 2 Sith out there. We don't know who they are.
What about this couple that beheaded themselves in a sacrifice with a homemade guillotine?
Wow. What?
What did they sacrifice themselves to or for?
New Delhi, an Indian couple has allegedly died by suicide using a guillotine-like mechanism to decapitate themselves in a sacrificial ritual. Hamubai Makhwana and his wife Hansa Ben both died by decapitation after using a homemade blade. The couple first prepared a fire altar before putting their heads under a guillotine like a mechanism held by a rope. Quoted by saying in the outlets, as soon as they released the rope, an iron blade fell on them, severing their heads, was rolled into the fire. Fire is considered to be sacred in Hinduism and played a significant role in several worship rituals. The couple apparently designed the device in a way that would roll into the fire. They say who it was for. They're not even telling you which god that they were worshiping.
Wow.
At least they didn't do it to anyone else.
True.
Let's take the silver
Right,
lining.
that's right.
At the end of the article, it
like
says,
who they sacrifice it to.
At the end of the article, it says, earlier this month, Indian police arrested 5 men for murdering a woman in 2019 inside a Hindu temple in Guwahati. And what they said was a case of ritual human sacrifice.
Oh, interesting. Hindus do ritual sacrifice? I didn't know that.
Yeah, apparently some Hindus do, I guess.
The
At least
land
these
of
guys.
1,000 gods.
If you learn that doing human sacrifice is the only way to get like magic powers, I would probably find some other way to go.
Human
I don't
sacrifice.
need magic powers that bad.
Do you think that war is just like a big cover for human sacrifice? Because especially look at like World War I, where they just march a bunch of people into a trench and just have them all die. It was ensured that that at least 10,000 people died today. So you got it on a book. You could make sure that you had your atonement ritual. You know?
Okay, here you go. Here's how that works as well. If you look at any of the shrines to the forgotten soldier or the fallen soldier, and you have these huge monuments to the fallen soldiers, a lot of the times they've got those obelisks and they've got that Egyptian pyramid architecture, a lot of geometry going on. What's to say that those places aren't harnessing the energy of the fallen soldiers like they are a sacrifice?
Yeah. I was listening to your show earlier today, speaking of pyramids. I think it was today, Xirtus, I was listening to your show, and you were speaking about pouring cement with blood in it on the pyramids, and that just makes me think of the parallel of the Aztec pyramids and cutting the person's throat at the top and the blood runs down.
Yeah, quartz in the stone to make sure that the stone becomes crystalline, so it stays stronger. But also, the names too, because the names of these people are remembered even longer by the blood.
Pull up CEMEX, CEMEX. This is the thing that comes from and my friend Craig from Just Informed Talk is supposed to come on the show hopefully soon, but he would know more about this. But there's a company, CEMEX, that has a lot of tie-ins with like the Clinton Foundation or Globalists or something. I forget, but they use blood in their cement.
Yeah, I forget the name of the guy. My buddy Maitland's ex-girlfriend Tanya's father is a Polish Mexican engineer who invented a kind of like additive that they use for Cemex owns a huge chunk of his company, and they sell like a synthetic fuel that's used. Cemex is like really, really big. It kind of reminds me of the Arrival with Charlie Sheen company. Like
what properties does blood have that makes it good to have in cement, or is it more of like a religious corruption or like?
So, I mean, earlier when we were talking about it, I talked about Hemo the Magnificent, which is, you can watch on my channel, and it's like a 50s Frank Capra thing. And he talk about how blood's like, no, don't tell my story. I'm amazing. And the story of blood should be the story of love and of song. It's like, no, don't worry. We're on the level. We know about blood. We've been thinking about blood as long as we've been alive. We've been using it to grow plants. We've been making weird witch doctor blends and stuff. Blood's always been important to us, bloodletting. And so they've been studying blood for a long time, way before the hemoglobin tests that we're starting to see now, where they're saying, okay, yeah, you got us. If you give young blood to old people, they do better. If you give young hemoglobin to old mice, they do better. If you give old hemoglobin from old mice to young mice, the young mice get old quickly. They go through all sorts of the same problems that old people go through.
Holly says in the chat that blood makes cement flow. It's just a viscosity aid.
I mean, I just think it's the iron originally, because you think, a lot of time you use seashells and you use blood from like fish or from livestock, and it's mixed in. It also crystallizes. The crystals start to hold together the bond, and then you've got a stronger stone that in like 20 years to 100 years is way stronger than it was when it was cut. And it's also the grout in between the stone that actually ends up becoming part of the stone itself, because it starts to weave into the stone. So you can look at like quartz stone castles. I don't know if I can find an example of one, but like for instance, like something like a stone castle where they have made sure that they've powderized a lot of this quartz stone, and they've mixed it in with pig blood or cow blood or human blood, and that's just like a very common thing. But along the coast, you'll use seashell because it's just better, and
rich in so you're just like minerality is the idea.
Yeah, because what you're doing is you're trying to make a stone. So afterwards, it grows like stone over time changes, right? And the crystal will grow. The other thing is there's a chemical reaction that takes place with it. There's like a heat that's produced, and the heat helps in the bonding. The hotter, if it gets like 110 degrees, 120 degrees, that helps in the bonding of concrete as well. And, the other thing is concrete's a major secret. So many people talk about how we forgot Roman concrete. It's not true. There were definitely families that knew how to make concrete for generations, hundreds of generations. And it's just been their trade secret across Eastern Europe and everything. And, in America, it became really interesting because people started popping up from the old world who knew how to do the stuff, and they were pouring concrete. And you can go to places like, wow, parts of America have just the most incredible concrete work, but it's because of these secrets essentially that were held. The other weird one is brick, right? So brick making, brick making often, because it's iron, mud bricks were, one of the first things they realized, hey, blood, and then you kiln it. So once it's superheated, then it becomes this glassy crystalline, and then that brick is way stronger. And also afterwards, it doesn't hold moisture. And so that's really useful. So, I mean, and then the stories of the Great Wall of China, bodies in the wall, not true, right? Because the bodies would rot away. So what they did was there's some stories of like mass graves or something like that. But in the actual Great Wall of China, what it is they've ground up dead workers, and they put their bone in, and there's a lot of bone that made its way in as well.
Yeah.
Something that a Moro Nathan talks about is the bone, and then the idea that the bone has crystal in it, and it was maybe used. I mean, some of these religious stories are that the bones, wow, we have so many bones in our building, so many bones in our cathedral. It's so magical because it's made from these Christian soldiers or whatever it is, and that the bones have the resonance to talk to God or something. So also in these Antiquitech buildings, that they might have been using the bone meal for the purpose of making some sort of an antenna, Pretty cray. But also, but then it's the wall thing again, because just thinking what you said about you have the dead, and it's not just the dead, it's the living's investment in it. So the families that are remembering this. So for as many generations as they're still remembering this person, it's like a Shintoism, and they're pouring that energy into it. It's made relevant every generation, right? Because they're like, this is what they died for. And it really, you're pointing to the wall at that point. Human sacrifice, Jesuits. I had another one. What about the weird tech link thing? Or Bandersnatch, U.S. nuclear war strategy. How about that? So they keep threatening to pull the trigger on some sort of a nuclear war. And earlier, Drew, you were talking about how socialist or softs or whatever the word is for a lot of this generation is that a real like contact war, a tactile war, a physical interaction seems less, for some of the population, it's useful because you could really quickly force the aggressive states to become like the left-in states that have already become pacified by the wars they had generation ago. But the next question is like nuclear strategy, because they keep saying, oh, well, we could just pull it. And do you think there's any places in the world that are really in jeopardy of just being wiped out? Like, is there a point in history where New York or Paris or anything we've imagined just gone? You think that this is going to happen to any of these cities?
Well, it doesn't fit military strategy. And I was in the Australian Air Force, and you wouldn't target big civilian centers like a city. You want that infrastructure. If you're taking over a country or invading, you want that for yourself. You target military installations, and you target states where there's bases. So a lot of spaces in Australia, you'd be hitting the top end of Queensland where our Air Force bases are and our naval bases, which are generally pretty far away from our capital centers and our population hubs.
I agree with that. And I think in addition to that, you also want to retain whatever moral force you have. So like nuking a civilian center would, and anyone who is, on the fence is certainly going to, it's still a bipolar, military world. So if you nuke New York City, you're certainly going to alienate a lot of potential allies.
Yeah, but also,
but I do see a dirty bomb going off just because like the idea has been around for so long, you know what I mean? And it's such a simple thing. We're lucky that we don't see all kinds of, people generally tend to be pretty good. Like we don't see drone terrorism. We have never seen a dirty nuke go off, and all the materials are lost all over the place. It's not like we have a bead on where all the nuclear materials in the world are, and it's that difficult to make a suitcase dirty bomb or anything like that. So it's kind of amazing that it's never happened.
We talk so much about like the nuclear propaganda in the 50s and 60s being kind of a joke, showing, hey, this is what it would look like if all of a sudden Colorado was wiped out. But I also wonder, there are places right now in Russia you can't go to because they have nuclear devastation. There are huge parts of the world that are kind of cut off, not just Chernobyl, but major lakes and things. I wouldn't put it past this world to all of a sudden not be able to go back to New York for 100 years or something like that. I think we could get to a point where we lose.
I think we're already at that point with New York. Like anyone who's left is probably not trying to go back. I'm from New York. I'm not trying to go back there.
God, well said. But nuclear targets might not be the right word for it. But just do you think that I
think the 5D warfare is so much worse. You know what I mean? Like just like that's what we're seeing is so powerful. The psychological warfare, especially using the internet and especially using AI. It's overwhelming, and you can almost target every citizen of a nation simultaneously just using the internet and using propaganda. So powerfully now. And now that we have language model AI, it's going to be able to create the most persuasive propaganda, of all time.
The nuke is like if you were a dentist, the nuke is like using a sledgehammer to take someone's tooth out. It's just too much. Where if you use precise tools like your
own tooth would be a better metaphor. Yeah. Hit yourself in the face with a hammer.
So, but you look at places like Chernobyl, and it became an unexpected habitat for wildlife, because there was nothing to stop the life from living. So all these animals like lynxes are really proliferating. And these eco-psychos who run a lot of the world and were, trying to protect nature, but didn't care if that hurt humanity, that seems like a plausible thing for some places. Like, this is a great way to make sure that humans don't live there. You know, we just have mastodons introduced to an area that is no longer habitable. And that's also in the FEMA executive orders, nuclear plan, that they can just take any piece of property and they, where's the emergency orders that they have? But they can take any property after a nuclear attack, right? And then they can use it for any other purpose, for environmental repatriation or reuse. So, I mean, it just seems like that maybe isn't New York City, but that we might expect some kind of a part of the world to say, okay, we just can't go there anymore. You know what I mean? Like, humans have to leave there. I mean, we've done that so often. You've got Tahiti, you got these islands that they've just forced people out
all of Antarctica.
Baghdad completely bombed out. I mean, if they could bomb Baghdad, they could bomb New York City, as far as I can tell.
Right. Like, what if they never nuked the Bikini Atoll, and then they're like, these are now our private islands that nobody even wants to go to? They're totally fine.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, I mean, do you think that maybe the Bikini Atoll isn't as bad as you think? I think that
I think it's important work that Owen Benjamin does when he commits to like a counter narrative and, like, you know, fleshes it out. There's no way to know for sure, but I think it's important to consider all that kind of stuff, knowing that their primary weapon against us is lies, you know.
Well, I mean, Chernobyl, for instance, there are people that have been living in Chernobyl. People have moved back to Chernobyl. And as far as I can tell, it's not nearly as bad as what we've heard. You know, they like to make it sound like it's really, really horrible. And I don't know if it ever really was that bad. I'm not going to show the worst pictures that they found because, yeah, you know what? I bet you in any place, you go to Flint, Michigan, you're definitely going to find as many problems.
I bet if they have a ton of lynxes and caribou and stuff there doing their thing, like, nothing makes an environment healthier than natural, you know, including humans, just natural activity, you know, eating and defecating and fertilizing the soil,
ecosystem,
and also bringing good vibes. Animals have great vibes. So radiation is basically just a bad vibe. You know, the animals are there tuning it. So I would say that, you know, going to a place like that, you'd probably experience like your best health, you know. If you moved to Chernobyl now, you'd probably be like, I feel better. My chronic pain's going away. You know, I wouldn't be surprised just because
it's weird. They don't like to show the map very much. Where's the map? Hold on. I just
a lot of the radiation was absorbed by the forest growing back. So the only real way you're exposed to the radiation is if you're burning the firewood. A lot of it retains within the trees. So that's nature taking it back right there.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Nature's amazing, you know. It's like just takes over.
I mean, Chernobyl is a good example because you would have never thought that Chernobyl was, you never would have thought that it would have been shut down. It was a super hyper futuristic city. There was a lot of people living there. You know, it was advanced. Yeah. Kind of, and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, you can never go back there. And maybe that's because of the radiation, but it also feels weirder. Like this was an experiment that they realized was dangerous. People being able to live without need, because all of a sudden everything's automated and runs for itself. And all you have to do is keep the civilization going. I mean, maybe it destroyed a kind of suffering that they needed in their lives. I was just recently watching the Bellflower. What is it called? No, that was it. The Broad Bellflower. It's a North Korean movie made by director and emperor and fabulous Kim Jong-un. Jong-il, right? But it's like the best movie, right? Because the whole time they're looking at North Korea and they're like, God, it's beautiful. We got to build all across this place. And there's just so much to think about how they're going to make Korea. He's crying about how beautiful Korea is and what he's going to do to save Korea. And all the time they've got these problems like a tractor breaks down and they don't worry about it. They just get back to work, you know, like they just go to the field and they start fixing it. But they cry when this girl realizes that it's so hard, maybe I should leave. And she's thinking about leaving. And then the guy returns who was taking her, he was going to escape North Korea. And he says he's so sorry, he regrets ever leaving. And she realizes that, you know, the only road to happiness is struggle, you know, that's the only way to get there. Maybe North Korean mind control, but I could vibe with that point. You know, I think we lose our struggle and then we won't try. If you have everything you need and you live in a perfect Chernobyl nuclear socialist state, then yeah, you don't care anymore. So we have to forcibly insert struggle into people's life, create these blights and these conditions that make people constantly struggle.
Well, I'm turning, isn't it?
I'm curious. What it seems like it was a success. Those that had a handle on the society as it runs now with that suffering were like, "Yo, we're losing. We're becoming irrelevant. We're the middle manager getting kicked out of this equation because when now society runs so well that individuals are so." No, humanity, we can take it. It's, I think.
That's interesting. Just the idea that the elite realized that they could be displaced by the thing. I feel like that's what's been going on with AI recently. They started realizing that they could be pushed out. You can replace the worker, but you can also replace the employer.
Yeah, absolutely.
How much of human society can be automated to the point where I would love to see the papers of Chernobyl. What happened when people had so much more autonomy back in their lives all at once because nuclear power was kicking it?
I mean, yeah. So at the time in Chernobyl, people had access to great food. It was brought in from so you had like the prime example of how to live. They're saying, okay, this was the model about how we want the future to be. We'll give them a little extra, essentially. They had access to better fruit, they had better citrus and things like that. And so they were an experiment that they were seeing. If they were all educated, they were all university kids, of the parents that they're involved. What if they built this like jewel city, And then I think they realized that they could lose control with that. They had access to books other people didn't have because they were so isolated. It was a 15-minute city. That's the thing about the Soviet Union. A lot of these oblasts were basically 15-minute cities. You get everything you could get and nothing else, So
it could also be even like a hit job by oil on nuclear. You know what I mean? Just like nuke Chernobyl, and say, the oil interests could do. I mean, like what's his name, Hearst and Reefer Madness, because he was the guy that had the paper mills.
Don Quigley, the astrologer for Reagan, was involved with planning the day for the Chernobyl.
Q is that Q?
Q with the Quigley, and that's why Pluto's eclipse was the day of the destruction of Chernobyl, because it just seemed Plutonian Pluto eclipse just seemed perfect. And she just earlier had orchestrated the Reykjavik summit on nuclear armistice with Reagan, which fell on, I forget what the astrological.
Her hair is crushing.
Dude, super bass. Yeah.
Like Chernobyl for the Leninists and the communists at the time, that was tiptoeing into what crony capitalism in the West was. A lot of stuff was just given, and to a lot of hardline communists, what is given can never be earned. Like we see the communists of today, they want everything, but the old communists, they had to earn it. They had their feet in the dirt, and they were doing the hard labor to get it done. That was the whole idea of what the USSR was. So yeah, I can see where you're coming from, and maybe it could have been someone from the inside triggering it and sending it off its top.
Why didn't they just collapse the United States instead of the Soviet Union? If the Soviet Union is so useful, like you've got these oblasts, you have secret cities.
Because it was a unipolar situation after World War II. So now you could have an option to crash the United States, and they're doing it, but when it was a unipolar world, there wasn't.
I want to read a comic book where the Soviet Union makes it and the United States crashes under capitalism.
What I'm saying is the United States was the they at that point. We were they. So.
But the CIA was already in the Banana Republic and international. I mean, they didn't need the U.S. the same way anymore. If they collapsed the United States, it would have been. I mean, I guess they kind of did because you remove the former president. You assassinate Kennedy, and you kind of already take over the United States. Keep it going.
Could just be as simple as they're born here and they live here and they took an oath here, and that's
Or corporate greed. Maybe they wanted more. Like they wanted to build the infrastructure to a better point before they.
Use all the wealth that they had first, right? Spend it all first. But the thing is, what's weird is about collapsing the Soviet Union is the Soviet Union had all of what they want, right? Like you've got people are forced to work. They are forced to live in privileged convenience of an apartment building or a state-owned house. You're given gasoline only enough to get where you need to go to work. I mean, you're given enough food to. It seems like that's exactly what we're trying to build. The world order is trying to do to the rest of the world. So why did they need to collapse the Soviet Union?
I mean, it was a failure. The economy was a failure. So, I mean, maybe it just created an easy comparison between capitalism and communism. You're like, look right here, you got two superpowers. One's capitalist, one's communist, and the communist one is failing, and their ruble ain't worth crap. And, you know, people are waiting in bread lines. So maybe they're just like, pull it. You know, we'll try this again in 50 years. People won't remember.
I mean, that's the other thing. The idea that the Wonder Bread that we had was real bread, you know, is a crazy optical illusion. While at least they had actual bread, you know.
It's true. It's a good point. Yeah, the reason we had to create Wonder Bread is because World War II, we weren't able to import. So, you know, wheat was all coming from Eurasia. And so, yeah, we didn't have the building blocks to make actual bread. So we just bleached a bunch of crap and glued it together and called it Wonder Bread.
It's weird for me to pretend that the United States in the 70s and 80s was somehow like so much less corrupt, so much more efficient. And there were a lot of people that were fed. But again, the Soviet Union, you didn't have the poverty that we're told. It's not actually as crazy as it was in certain cities, like in Warsaw, parts of Poland. There was issues because of central planning, but even that has to make you wonder, was the CIA involved in trying to manipulate the central planners? Because they knew where the bread was coming from. They could make sure that certain people had not access in certain cities, which would lower morale and would make sure that they had control over whichever person that they wanted to bribe. You know, I feel like the United States, the CIA, worked really hard to make sure that the Soviet Union didn't function. As much as they say that the Soviet Union was this horrible place, I just don't see how it's possible for that many generations that it would continue going and then all of a sudden just be, you know, locked up, unless it was the CIA planned on folding it into the world government.
Maybe it's two experiments at the same time. You have the idea of communism, socialism, and then you have the West of consumerism and never-ending expansion, and they were just waiting to see how societies would go with each, and maybe it just naturally fizzled out. And
this is all a Soviet experiment. That's not what I meant. I just meant the Soviet experiment. You know what I mean? Not Soviet experiments. Yeah. But yeah,
this is all on the heels of the creation of the UN and the kind of the advent, the first real attempt at world government. You know,
I feel like they didn't know which way it was going to work. Whether the
for sure. I mean, definitely the Bolsheviks and those are the elites, the intellectuals. So that was, you know, and that was their testing ground was the Soviet Union, and it was a failure.
So yeah, well, I mean, or they learned what they needed to learn. And now with America, like, so they give one group of people too much, give one group of people too little. And then after they're done with that, they wipe everything off the board and they start over in China, you know, with a new mix of both.
Yeah, I mean, that's a maximally conspiratorial way to look at it. But I think a lot of this, I think things are at their peak of like conspiratorialness now. Like, I mean, we can, you know, I understand there's like Jesuit ancient treatises that like outline this stuff. But in terms of actually seeing it manifest in the world, you know, the UN is kind of like a good starting point for the rubric we live in now. And that's pretty close to the world wars, you know, so.
I think the one thing that like people badmouth communism in the USSR, but you look at like the quality of life on a social standing, people felt connected to their country in a way that you don't see in the West anymore. Everyone had a purpose. Even if you're the guy that was on the street and your job was to sweep the town center each day, that person would have felt like they were actually contributing to society. Whereas now you've probably got ridiculous high rates of depression and people don't feel like they've got a purpose in life.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at Russian life expectancy, because everyone's like, oh, it's so high up. Actually, it's a little lower, really, or about where it's at for where it was in the 60s in the Soviet Union. And then there's a certain inevitable collapse when the United States is pushing Khrushchev, right, and trying to stop the Brezhnev agreements. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I didn't read it yet, but I want to read The White Pill. You know, Michael Malice knows a lot about this subject. But my understanding is basically with the technology they had at the time, it was literally like too much ground to cover to keep everyone, you know, under the heel. And all it really took was you know, one phone call, like, oh, go in the street and crush this protest, you know, send out the tanks. And they're just like, no, we're not going to do that. You know, you guys are like a million miles away. This is our problem over here. And that was the fall of the Soviet Union as soon as like orders were being refused.
Yeah.
And then the bluff was called, you know.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
I don't think it was intentionally they set up a capitalist country and a communist country. I think that's like giving them too much credit, especially with, you know, technology at this point. You could, but mostly people, there are people like George Soros who will invest their time, energy, and money into like a certain region and a certain cause. But to make the entire world your cause, I mean, I guess it's possible, but we're talking about people with like power networks that I couldn't even fathom.
I mean, we talk about colonial families, and you think about families in like South Africa, who were in Botswana, who were in Britain, who were from Germany, who'd been originally from St. Petersburg, who came from Iran. I mean, yeah, they're all over the place. You got a family all over the place, and if they're not necessarily rooted into the place so much, then they can move around, or they can have families that sprout up in new places. And I think that is what we saw in the 20th century. You have this idea that the Ukrainian nationalists who ended up in New York City were going to build new America. And then you've got also the former Soviets, which are, I mean, as the Soviet Union built itself up, it definitely had an ideology. And I think that's the thing that's missing a lot, is that maybe the ideology of the Soviet Union offered more freedom than America's do. And that seemed like a thing that we had to wrap. Like, oh yeah, no, that's not going to happen. So shut down the idea of the social responsibility of the state, so that we can move away from offering people free education or whatever, unless it's just for the purpose of the state and the corporation, that we're going to have them working for us. That wasn't the way it was under Stalin. Under Stalin, it's like 99% literacy was achieved by all these kulaks who used to be just peasants.
Yeah, because everyone who turned back a study saying that their school had a 94% literacy got shot.
Yeah, that's true too. But you damn well make sure your kids can read, man.
Yeah.
Good job, Stalin.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
Don't trust them.
That's the magic of that record keeping, Well, I mean, we see our nation do that as well. We can look back and say, right now is the strongest economy of our time, and like all these great things are happening is the messaging you get right now. The economy is strong and robust.
I mean,
pay a to the numbers.
Yeah, our democracy has never been stronger.
The more you think about where we're at today, though, yeah, we do tell ourselves that this is the best it's ever been, and that it's never been, so good, and that the problems are the least we've ever had. That people that are poor live better than kings used to live. But you can't help but wonder about the lack of force also that's in people. Like Drew's talking about weakened people because of privilege and stuff. And so under Stalin, okay, maybe the people are forced. But yeah, I think that also goes hand in hand with the fact that they had a higher literacy rate. And, maybe like the way Alfred's talking about in Africa, people are willing to work a lot harder because they could suffer more, So,
I actually think the physical work feeds the mental energy. Like, it is a huge mistake to not move your body pretty much all day. I hate sitting down unless I'm doing this. I'm like walking, standing, moving, stretching all day. So people who are forced to work for a living and work long days and stuff like that, I think it does just create good health and good mental habits and everything. So yeah,
that could be a big thing too. They're just trying to force people to spend their day doing something.
Our body is its own machine, separate from our mind. You know what I mean? So forcing people to sit down all day, like school for kids, is like insane. It's amazing the kids even survive and are able to stand up at the end of it. I mean, kids are supposed to be running, climbing, swimming, just doing everything. And like a puppy expending so much energy, you know what I mean? So
it's kind of like you look at, there's a big push now for people to become homesteaders, or within the conspiracy community, air quotes. People desire that, which was a hard life. You had to really work, but it actually felt like living. It looked like living for like us now looking back. That was life. Now a lot of people feel like they're just going through the motions because we're in this big system.
Right.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, I don't have like a huge desire for homesteading. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's a good idea and all.
We're sacrificing ourselves by not doing it. We could go homestead, but we're sacrificing ourselves because we want to. Like this is what I think, for you guys probably too, but like we want agency in this, and like homesteading and homeschooling is great, but you're like sacrificing a lot of your agency, what I mean?
There's a lot of time
I want to be
spent
in the game. I want to be near on the border of Babylon where all the action is,
Right. Yeah. I'd like vertical gardens and a lot of the New World Order stuff. I want vegetables brought to my door from drone, and I want to have a robot dog, more than I want to have a real dog that poops on the floor. I mean, I got problems, I'll admit it, but I don't think that nature is necessarily divorced. Like Seth has said before, I don't think nature is divorced from this spaceship humanity that we're building. Right. I think that's also part of it. And we might need to stop looking at things as alien. And I think that's another important thing Alfred said. Like the alien thing is such a cultural perspective. Yeah.
You brought up earlier, Andreas, what if we edit out some little specific gene and it's like a domino effect or something, using CRISPR? What if we edit out the human body? You know what I mean? Imagine the consequences of that. And that's why I'm always saying before this AI gets so self-aware, it should have a body. You know what I mean? It should be able to.
I've been thinking about this also, like, you imagine taking someone who committed a crime and you put their mind inside of a VR prison, instead of a real prison. So something that can like change their brain, essentially change their memories because they're going through these processes like a dream state or something. But you could do this without it being a crime to a child. Like before they live their life, you could give them this, lifetime or thousands of lifetimes of experiences that are just recordings that they go through that are imprinted into their memory set. And then when they're born, then as they're born or as they're living 2, 3, 5 years old, those things become entwined with their personality. I mean, that would be a thing that would make it hard. I mean, we talk about killing people, that more and more people would be printed with the same data so they would think the same way, have the same responses. But also, it might make it possible for us to know before things happen. You have this idea of what touching the fire will do to you. So we're also getting to a point where we're not necessarily defined by our own independent knowledge. Our agency might be based on syllogisms or whatever information we're given.
There's a really dark version of that on a Stargate episode where there's a race of humans and they upload all the information about one, say, scientific area, like, say, chemistry, and they upload it into this kid's mind. And all the way up to the age of 12, before there's a major change within the brain, they download all the information from the extra study that they do. And that adds up to a database for the civilization. So children get sacrificed at the age of 12 so they can advance with their knowledge base in science.
I mean, yeah, I kind of think they do that. And also, I know Corey Good's kind of nonsense, but the 20 and back program is real. There's definitely effort put into training, using, and then removing from the equation and putting into some sort of a cush, simple life, the person that is simultaneously a part of this program, somebody who's doing important things. And it's also the same as the crystal skulls, right? The idea that every generation they're putting their energy into the skull and they're losing it. I mean, the only difference, again, with this magic thing is now we're pretty much open to it. Substrate independence, people recording their memories forever. But if you were to take the next kid and then you say you've been selected to have all the memories of Bill Gates or Ray Kurzweil, how close is that going to come to taking over their mind,
It could be a huge mistake. I mean, we're the only species that makes species-wide mistakes. You know what I mean? Like other animals, individuals might make mistakes and run towards a lion by accident. But it's not like birds as a species are just like, let's fly north for the winter. This sucks going south every time. Let's try north. And then every bird dies, that's like a special potentiality for humans.
Is that what crows are arguing about? They're like, really, east.
There's got to be one crow.
Larry,
there's got to be that one crow, right? He's like, there's a whole other crow kingdom to the north. That's where they tell us go south.
Come by it. Well, all right. I wanted to also make sure that you guys go to Missing the Point, Drew Missin 88 podcast, Podbean, because he's got a lot of cool episodes. I know you just did a recent one, Conspiracy Chit Chat with Mike, Ducky Boys.
Yeah, just really interesting connection that there was a prison hulk that was destined to come to Australia, which set up in San Francisco Bay and led to one of the biggest fires in San Francisco history. So really interesting stuff.
Oh, really? The 1905 fire?
Yeah, they were blamed for it.
That's interesting. Wow. That's
Andreas
pretty cool.
loves that fire.
Yeah, I think about it too often, probably. But, make sure you subscribe and check him out because he's got some pretty cool stuff. The other thing I was going to say is check out his memes because his memes are, precocious. I really like him.
That was funny.
Yeah, no, I mean almost every single one of them actually,
Nice.
I feel them pretty hard. Sometimes I feel Australian just by looking at the memes, essentially.
Very cool.
But no, it's a universal appeal. So Missing the Point. Some of these I'm going to put into the Advanced Philosophy Memes group just to make sure that people are checking out your work. And also, Mr. Douglas, Mr. with a 3. MrDouglas.com. Hanging with Mr. Douglas. He's got the Secrets of Power audiobook series available here. You got to go on Audible and download it because it's friggin' awesome. If you have an Audible account, I think you get like a free ticket. So you should be able to if you've never done that before. See, look at that. grab yourself the Secrets of Power and listen to it and share it with your friends and your family. Share it with your parents. I showed this to my dad. He liked it a lot. So,
by the way, all the recommendations that come off of that title are awesome. I already listened to 2 of the recommendations off of that.
yeah, see, that's the other thing I'm hoping is that people
Build some good momentum.
Yeah, I want people that click on like The Trap with David Icke to end up back at Secrets of Power with
One can only hope.
Yeah, pretty exciting stuff. I hope that more and more people are listening to this. It's amazing. And look at the 5-star rating. Keep giving it 5-star ratings. That's like at least do that, America. Okay.
Thanks, America. Thank you, Andreas. And everybody like, subscribe, smash those buttons for Wednesday Ultra and beyond with this gentleman. He is
God bless you.
A wonder. And it's a wonder that,
I wonder that I'm alive. No, I hear you.
Doing it from space. This is fantastic.
Seth, also, Venice Beach Dub Club. If you go to the linktree.v/VBDC, you can find all of his music videos. Pretty amazing stuff going on right here. Drone footage.
Listen to that.
Oh yeah, it goes with my shirt good today.
Honestly, though, like the more you listen to it, the more you want to listen to it, and that's a good thing.
Thank you.
So it's
thanks. Yeah, and I'm hard at work on a new album right now, but all my existing music is up there on every platform, and my music videos are on my VBDC YouTube channel. There's also VBDC.store. I also make some meme shirts and other stuff you might be interested in checking out. And I also have a pro wrestling podcast if you enjoy that kind of thing. It's called Rocket Buster Wrestling on YouTube. You can check that out too. And I'll be back soon with an album.
Looking forward to those summer jams. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Rocket Buster Wrestling. Yeah, make sure you're checking this out because I haven't really had, there's not enough people talking about wrestling, to be honest. I feel like that's a hyper important thing. Yeah, your background's clutch. I was gonna say Kush, but
it just lucked out. I just lucked out, man. It's all just purchased on Amazon.
Yeah, dude, pretty sweet. I'm jealous.
Cool. Thank you guys. It was a great show. Thank you, chat. You guys are awesome in the chat,
dude. And we will see you next time. Love you all. Peace.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, the invite.